It's 2 in the afternoon on Wednesday, August 20th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Na Hyun-kyung, and these are the stories we're following at this hour. The two main rival parties reach an agreement on a special bill designed to determine the exact cause of April's ferry sinking, but the bereaved families reject it. Islamic State militants claim to have beheaded an American journalist who went missing in Syria in 2012. U.S. officials worked to confirm the authenticity of a video that purportedly shows the murder.
I call him my brother John, who is a member of the...
And there are 30 days to go until the 2014 Asian Games. Nearly 10,000 athletes from dozens of Asian countries will gather in Korea's host city of Incheon. Seoul aims to win more than 90 gold medals. And we begin with the special bill in question. Korea's two rival parties were able to find common ground on the specifics of a bill that would set up an investigation into April's ferry sinking, but family members of the victims have rejected the deal, driving the bill back into a deadlock. ARIRANG's Kwon Soa reports.
The deal struck on Tuesday by the country's two main parties on the Sewol-ho ferry bill will likely need to be tweaked. Saenuri Party floor leader Lee Wan-koo and his main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy counterpart Park Young-sun announced their agreement on the last day of the National Assembly's month-long extraordinary session with relieved smiles as the bill took weeks of wrangling. But the opposition party ended up having to hold another 5-hour-long meeting after the bereaved families rejected the bill. The families were still dissatisfied with the makeup of the committee members charged with handling the investigation.
4 spots on the panel will be allocated to lawmakers. 2 will be reserved for main opposition party and 2 for the ruling party. We'll appoint our share of the 2, only after seeking approval from the opposition and families of the ferry victims.
We're disappointed that the rival parties made agreements in this way, which is saddening the bereaved families once again.
The majority of the opposition parties say the families' rejection means the bill cannot be passed, but a few members say there is no more time for delay. The ruling party's floor leader said further renegotiations are not possible at this moment, as the governing party had already conceded to giving special prosecutorial powers as demanded by the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy. An extraordinary parliamentary session on the issue will be held Friday. Kwon Soa, ARIRANG News.
Despite Korea's continuous warnings that any military intervention on the peninsula requires Seoul's approval first, there is speculation that Japan may have other plans. Kim Ji-yeon has more.
80 battle tanks, 60 military aircraft, and 2,300 troops pound the foothills of Mount Fuji amid thousands of spectators. This is part of annual live-fire exercises for Japan's self-defense forces on Monday, a public display of the tactics and equipment that are used to defend Japanese territory.
They are great. These are the elite troops who will protect Japan, and I'm very glad they are on our side, not our enemies.
With all the fuss over China, Japan should have the equipment it needs, and I think it is the first step to building up deterrence.
While the crowd applauds Japan's expanding military role, it is a source of concern for neighboring countries like South Korea, a victim of Japan's militaristic past. Fearing the buildup, Seoul has repeatedly stressed that Japan must get its explicit consent on matters related to South Korea's security and interests. But Tokyo may already be in talks with Washington on countermeasures against such scenarios. According to the Japanese daily Yomiuri Shimbun Wednesday, the Japanese government plans to revise its defense treaty with the United States so it can provide weapons and ammunition to U.S. forces and air-to-air refueling for U.S. aircraft in the event of a security crisis on the Korean peninsula. The report said these will be part of the Japanese government's assistance for Washington and added the two sides are in their final stages of talks. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
Now, officials from both Korea and Japan are seeking to cool the tensions, though. One way to do so would be to settle the wartime sex slavery issue, says a senior official from Korea's foreign ministry. The unnamed official said Tokyo is under pressure from the United Nations, the U.S., and the European Union to atone for its historical wrongdoing. The Korean and Japanese foreign ministers agreed when they met in Myanmar earlier this month that there must be progress in their nations' high-level talks aimed at resolving this highly sensitive issue. The senior diplomat, however, made it clear that it's too early to talk about whether any progress is being made. The 2014 Asian Games is set to kick off in the South Korean port city of Incheon in less than a month, and a delegation from North Korea's Olympic Committee arrived in South Korea late Tuesday for some pre-Games functions. The group is made up of 8 North Korean officials. One of them is Yang Sung-ho, the president of the Korean University of Physical Education in Pyongyang. And after arriving from Beijing, the officials greeted waiting reporters with smiles but refused to answer any questions. During his stay, Yang will give a keynote speech and a presentation at a pre-Games event on Wednesday. The delegation will also tour the main stadium and the athletes' village before leaving on Friday. Around 150 North Korean athletes will take part in the Incheon Asian Games, which run from September 19th through October 4th. So nearly 10,000 athletes from dozens of Asian countries will be battling it out in Incheon next month in the 17th Asian Games. ARIRANG's Song Ji-sun tells us what to expect, as well as how many medals Team Korea aims to grab.
Preparations are complete. The venues are ready, and the villages for the athletes and media are set to open their doors on September 5th. The torch is on its way as well. It's traveling through Gyeonggi-do province on Wednesday with stops in the cities of Ansan and Suwon. It's the third time Korea is playing host to Asia's biggest sporting event, and the home field advantage has Korean athletes feeling confident. The team's goal is to earn at least 90 gold medals and place second overall after China. The Korean baseball team, which has won the Asian Games a total of 3 times, including 4 years ago in Gwangju, is considered a favorite.
Gold, gold, gold is the only word on our minds. But we're keeping a close eye on Japan, Taiwan, and China, as they have improved over the past few years as well.
A total of 439 golds in 36 sports will be up for grabs at this international event, during which nearly 10,000 athletes from 45 different countries will compete. 150 of the participants will come from North Korea. A delegation from the North Olympic Committee is currently in the South to participate in the group draws on Thursday for 10 different sports, including basketball, volleyball, and football. North Korea has placed first in women's football twice before and are the favorites to win in Incheon. Team North Korea's goal overall is finishing in the top 10, something they've accomplished when the games were held in the South Korean port city of Busan 12 years ago. Song Ji-sun, ARIRANG News.
In the year 2012 for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Na Hyun-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. Islamic State militants claim they have beheaded an American journalist who went missing in Syria nearly 2 years ago. Before being killed, the journalist, apparently coerced by his captors, blames the U.S. government for his impending death. Connie Lee has this report.
In a video released Tuesday by the Islamic State militants, it purportedly shows U.S. independent journalist James Foley being beheaded. The 39-year-old is seen wearing orange and on his knees, next to a gunman dressed in all black. The video, titled A Message to America, first starts off with a speech by President Barack Obama announcing that the U.S. military will begin targeted airstrikes in Iraq against the Islamic State, otherwise known as ISIS. The ordered airstrikes in the country was to help the Iraqi security force take on the militants who were gaining ground and killing thousands.
The video then shows Foley reciting a statement, presumably forced by his captors, that his real killer is America. Soon after, Foley is killed. The video continues, showing another U.S. journalist named Steven Sotloff, with the gunmen threatening to kill him too, saying that the life of this American citizen depends on the actions of President Obama. The authenticity of the video is currently being verified. A spokesperson for the White House National Security Council released a statement saying that the U.S. intelligence community is working as quickly as possible to determine the authenticity of the video. If genuine, we are appalled by the brutal murder of an innocent American journalist, and we express our deepest condolences to his family and friends. Foley has been reporting in the Middle East for the past 5 years until he disappeared while in northwest Syria back in November 2012. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
Now moving on to the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, Liberia, the worst-hit country, has enacted a curfew to minimize movement. All movement would be blocked in and out of the West Point slum where a quarantine center was attacked this past weekend. Here's Connie Kim with the story.
In a bid to stem the Ebola outbreak in Liberia, the nation's president has declared a nighttime curfew and ordered security forces to quarantine a slum that's home to at least 50,000 people. The new quarantine areas include Monrovia's West Point slum and all entertainment centers. The new measures come as there was a glimmer of hope in the fight against the outbreak, as infected healthcare workers in Liberia are reported to be showing remarkable signs of improvement after taking the experimental drug ZMapp. The three are the first Africans to receive the treatment. ZMapp was first given to 2 U.S. aid workers and a priest earlier this month. The UN Health Agency says it's only made between 10 to 12 doses of the drug available, and the most recent shipment went to Liberia. Meanwhile, Liberia has confirmed that all 17 suspected Ebola patients who fled their quarantine center when it was looted last weekend have been accounted for. Their sudden disappearance sparked fears a deadly virus could spread into the densely populated slum around it. People have turned themselves in and have been transferred to another clinic. It's not yet known whether any of them actually have Ebola. Latest figures from the WHO show Liberia registered the most new Ebola deaths over a 3-day period in the latter half of last week, with 53. The overall death toll observed in Liberia, Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Nigeria has now topped the 1,200 mark. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
31 people were arrested in yet another night of demonstrations in the U.S. state of Missouri that ended in chaos. A local official says a tiny minority of lawbreakers hailing from as far away as New York and California had instigated mayhem, setting 2 fires, throwing Molotov cocktails, and firing at police. U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder is set to arrive in the riot-hit city of Ferguson on Wednesday to lead the federal government's probe on the shooting. In a separate development, another young African-American man was shot and killed by St. Louis police not far from Ferguson after reportedly brandishing a knife at officers. And shifting gears, global ratings agency Fitch has retained its AA- status for South Korea, maintaining its outlook at stable. The finance ministry said Tuesday that Fitch had cited quote-unquote moderate government debt and sustained budget surpluses behind its decision. The agency evaluated Korea's growth as still being resilient, although the domestic economy has been dented by April's ferry disaster. Now, rising household debt and the North Korea risk factor were cited as weak spots that could damper the country's sovereign credit profile. And for months now, the government has been on its toes, sounding the alarm about the nation's sluggish economic growth. They've ushered in a new team and introduced stimulus measures to provide a spark. Well, a new survey now suggests the economic community, by and large, approves of the new team's policies. Our economics correspondent Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
The new economic team led by Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan has received a passing grade for boosting the domestic economy, at least according to the 37 economic experts recently surveyed by the Federation of Korean Industries. More than half of the respondents said the set of government stimulus measures proposed are sufficient for propping up the ailing economy. Just around 15% of them thought they were not. The experts surveyed also said that government measures should focus on boosting domestic demand by removing excessive regulations and running an expansionary fiscal and financial policy. While around half of the experts expressed concerns about the Korean economy falling into a low-growth trap that resembles that of Japan, the other half were more optimistic, saying the domestic economy is on a recovery track, but that the momentum has slowed because of the ferry disaster in April. They cited the sluggish real estate market, mounting household debt, and worsening consumer and business sentiment due to the ferry tragedy as the biggest challenges currently facing the economy. As for the long-term problems, the experts pointed to the absence of new growth engines, slumping private consumption and investment, the low birth rate, and Korea's aging population. The majority of the experts expect that domestic demand will return to the level seen just before the April ferry disaster if the government measures are implemented as planned. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
Korea's tech giant Samsung Electronics is expanding its business portfolio. Samsung said Tuesday it had acquired a 100% stake in QuietSide, a U.S.-based retailer for air conditioners, but declined to give details, including the price. Samsung last week purchased U.S.-based platform developer SmartThings, which develops applications that monitor, control, and automate devices at home. Now, both acquisitions are seen as part of Samsung's efforts to make inroads into the North American smart home market. It's also said to be about diversifying its sources of profit, as Samsung's dominance in the smartphone industry has waned in the face of growing competition. And Korea is fast becoming the #1 tourist destination for Chinese visitors, and with that, their spending is also expected to make a huge increase over the next 5 years or so. The Korea Tourism Organization and Hana Tae-two Securities estimate Chinese tourists will spend over $30 billion in Korea in 2020, a nearly 5-fold increase compared to last year. They also say the number of Chinese tourists will increase by nearly 20% every year through 2020 to reach 15 million in that year. Chinese money spent in duty-free shops, which takes up one of the largest portion in their spending, is expected to jump 9-fold during the 2013 to 2020 period to $9 billion. Seoul has been listed as the 16th most influential city in the world. U.S. economics magazine Forbes pegged the South Korean capital as one of the rising stars, hinting that it could make into the top 10 in the near future. Forbes took into account various factors such as foreign investment and concentration of corporate businesses. London was deemed the world's most influential city this year. New York City came in a close second, followed by Paris and Singapore. Over the summer, we saw so many musicals take stages throughout the country. Some of them were produced here in Korea, while others were produced abroad. Today, our Im Yoon-hee joins me with yet another musical that's gaining recognition. Good afternoon, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon. Right. So earlier this summer, we actually saw the musical Mozart produced, and that is obviously about one of the greatest legends in classical music. But what many people didn't know is that Mozart actually in real life had an arch rival. Now, Antonio Salieri was another musical genius, and it looks like their rivalry went beyond their death and into the musical stage. So take a look.
The Italian classical composer comes back to life on the musical stage. A pivotal figure in the development of 18th century operas, Antonio Salieri taught some of the most famous musicians of all time, including Schubert, Beethoven, and Liszt. But throughout history, the classical composer has been hidden beneath the shadow of Mozart, his arch-rival. Now, the story of Salieri and his musical career comes into the spotlight as a dynamic and engaging performance. Also at the Sejong Center, for 2 nights only at the Grand Theater, one of the most beloved operas is set to take the stage. A collaboration between Korea's Seoul Opera and Italy's Rome Opera House, Tosca is one of Puccini's most performed tragic operas. It's a story about love and death, and the captivating opera singer Tosca, who falls in love with the artist Cavaradossi. But their happy love story starts to fall apart when the chief of police finds himself infatuated with Tosca as well. Tragedy awaits this plot of love and jealousy, a performance being put on by the experienced and talented Italian artistic team, along with some of Korea's top opera singers.
So is it the first time that the group of Italian opera singers and for that production company to have collaborated?
Right, so actually they have performed together before. Earlier this year they performed The Elixir of Love, and so this is really a unique opportunity to see some Italian opera performers, because obviously Italy has one of the greatest, richest histories in opera and classical music, and Korea's history is not as long, but there's so much we can learn from this opera troupe, and then there's so much also that Korea can offer to the global opera audience as well.
And there was something about the production team that there was the Korean team, but there's also other foreign production teams you mentioned.
Right, so this is a very integrated collaboration. So the stage designer, the director, the producer, the costume designer, they're all from Italy, from the Rome group, from the Rome troupe, and so very interesting collaboration with Korean singers, and so you get to see some unique costumes from abroad, very rich, extravagant stage decorations, but at the same time you can hear Korean vocals, Korean singers.
And you mentioned before the newscast that there's even a festival for the musical lovers here in Korea.
Exactly. So the 14th Daegu International Opera Festival is set to take place this year in October.
It's such an interesting festival.
Yes, a very interesting festival where they're going to offer quite a bit this year. You're going to see Turandot, La Traviata, Romeo and Juliet, some very big name operas. And so this is another festival that really allows Korea to globalize the Korean opera and to show it to the world audience, the global audience. And so in the past, they actually have been abroad to various countries to show Korean performers and to collaborate as well. And so another great performance that will be taking place in October, and I'll have more information as it comes around.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Yoon-hee, for your report today.
It was a pleasure.
Good afternoon, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. We're left with more gloomy weather across the nation. However, it will stay dry throughout the day here in Seoul, while heavy rain is in the forecast in the southern regions, and also a heavy rain advisory is in effect on Jeju Island, where up to 20 millimeters of precipitation will fall per hour. Now, the southern regions can expect between 50 to 150 millimeters of rain until Friday, while the central region and the Gangwon province will see upwards of 200 millimeters. Now, due to the dry weather here in Seoul, it's expected to be a tad hotter today, although the regions where rain is falling will stay cool. Now, going over to our temperature readings. Seoul will top out this afternoon at 28 degrees. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will top out at 26 and 25 degrees. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops over to 26 as well. Dokdo hits 25, while Mankungang stops at 24. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Hyungyang.
All right, thank you, Michelle. That's all we have for you now. Our next newscast is at 4 p.m. Korea time. I'll see you then.